This video will help you understand how to play Delia by Javier Jara. Now, there are a lot of notes here, so I won't talk through every single measure in great detail, but I'll hit all of the big things that I think you need to know, and then you can always ask me questions and we'll go into more detail in our lessons. But let's start by talking about the notes that you'll find in Delia. So this song is in D major, so we've got F sharp and C sharp. This should feel really familiar to you because the first half of the Suzuki book is using this finger pattern. So when we're playing F sharp, so for example, putting second finger on the tape on the D string or second finger on the tape on the A string for C sharp, this is our finger pattern. It looks like this. So we have a big space between first and second finger, and second and third finger are right next to each other. So that should feel very familiar, and that's what we see in the first phrase of Delia. And before I play it, I also want to talk about the symbol that you'll see above the very first note. It looks like a caret or an arrow, and that means up bow. So you're going to play up bow on the first note. Move your bow toward the ceiling. Now you can see that I've already written in the finger numbers that you should be putting down above the note, and I've written the string that you should be on below the note. So even if you're still working on your note reading, you still know what note I'm playing. So anytime that I'm changing strings, I wrote that below the note. So if you don't see a letter like A or E written below the note, that means you're staying on the same string. You just stay on the same string until you see a new letter. So go ahead and follow along. This is the first line of Delia. And one more thing I'll mention about the first phrase is that you'll notice that we have an incomplete measure at the beginning. And I talked about this in my other video about understanding the rhythms in Delia, but just as a reminder, we have two missing beats, okay? This is called a pickup. So that very first note is the third beat of an incomplete measure. So when I'm counting us off, when we're playing this together, I'll give you two beats, and then we'll come in on that up bow for the third beat. So it'll sound like this. 1, 2. Rest. Rest. That's what that squiggly line is next to some of the notes. So whenever you see that squiggle, that is one beat of rest. It's a quarter note rest. Now we get into the next line, which has some less familiar notes. So we start with first finger on the A string. Now you'll see a small letter B written next to the next note. That is an accidental, and it's the accidental called flat. So what that means is it's lowering the note. So it's still first finger on the A string, but instead of B natural, it's B flat. So you're going to move your first finger from the tape down below the tape. So it's a low first finger. So the difference between B natural and B flat sounds like this. This is B natural, and that's B flat. So if you look at the second line of Delia, we have B natural, and then B flat, and the rest is in a familiar finger pattern. We've got third finger on the D string, open D, and then the rest is pretty self-explanatory. So I'll play the second line. Now I'll play the first two measures a little bit more slowly so you can see how I'm moving my first finger back. Really, I'm just compressing that first finger. So if I'm on B natural, my finger might look like this, and then I'm just going to compress that first finger even a bit more. So now here I'm going to leave my first finger down on the A string as an anchor for my third finger when I'm stretching to the D string. Now I can lift both fingers. Now I'm going to play F sharp, second finger on the D string. Now I'm going to quickly roll my second finger onto the A string, directly across from one string to another on the tape. Rest. Now let's take a look at the third line. We're starting on open A. Now here we run into another new note, which is C natural. So instead of putting our second finger on the tape when we're playing on the A string, this time, since we have that natural sign, we're going to lower our finger. So a natural sign just takes away the accidental that was there before. So we were playing a C sharp, we were putting our second finger on the tape, but now that natural sign has taken away the sharp, so now we have to lower our second finger. So now it's right next to first finger. And we get finger pattern 2, which looks like this. First and second finger are close now. So I'll play the third line. Now, the fourth line starts similarly. We have A again, C natural, so a low second finger, 3, 3 again. Now here, when you come back to second finger, you'll notice that it has a sharp sign next to it. So a sharp sign, a sharp sign raises the note. So now we're removing that natural sign and we've raised the note again. So you're going to put your second finger back on the tape, and you'll notice I wrote an arrow above that note to remind you that second finger is now raised back to the tape. So I'll play the fourth line. And just a quick note, it's going to be really easy to not hold that half note long enough in the third measure of the fourth line. Make sure you're holding that half note for a full 2 beats, or we're going to end up jumping the gun a little bit and beating the guitarist. So now you'll notice the last measure of this line is just a block. It's a colored in block, and that is a full measure of rest. So you're going to count 3 full beats. Now, if you start the fifth line of Delia, you'll notice another block. So that's another full beat, or a full measure of rests. So we have 6 beats of rest between those 2 measures. Okay, each one is 3 beats of rest, and we have 2 measures in a row. So now let's look at the rest of that line. The fifth line starts with first finger on the A string, third finger on D. Now first finger hops over to the D string, third finger on D. Now open D, F sharp. Now those measures of rest that I was talking about that came right before that, that's where the singer enters. So Javier will start singing at that point during that first measure of rest. So you'll hear him sing while we're resting, and then I'll give you a cue for when to come in. We'll come in together, and now that he's started singing, we're going to be playing along with him. So it's going to be really important for you to listen to the recording of his song so that you understand how our part fits along with his singing. But for now, I'll just play what I just played, all put together. So now we've made it to the next line, and you'll see that we have another 2 measures of rest. He'll be singing here too, and then we have 3 quarter notes. So this is actually an arpeggio. We are skipping every other note. So let's start with third finger on the D string. Now we have first finger on the A string. We skipped over open A. Now we're going to skip second finger and put down third finger. Now we play C sharp, second finger on A. Now we move to the next line. Put your third finger on the D string. Now here you'll notice 2 eighth notes. So those are the notes that have the note heads colored in, they have stems or lines attached to them, but there's also a flag connecting those two notes. So those are 2/8 notes. Each one is worth half a beat, and since they're connected, that means that when we play them both, they take up the space of one beat. So take a look at the second measure of that line, and we've got 1, 2, 3, and. Now let's go to rehearsal B. You'll see the letter B written in a square. That's just to help us keep track of where we are. So go to rehearsal B, and we have 3 fingers on D string. And now we've made it to the last line on this page. So I'll play that line, and there's nothing new here. We're just following the key signature. There are no lowered or raised notes. So I'll go ahead and play it. Now we've made it to the first line of the next page. And you'll see here that we have a natural sign. That's one of our accidentals. So the natural sign, remember, takes away whatever accidental was attached to the note before. So this is second finger on the D string, which is F. Now we already have F sharp in the key signature. So if the natural sign wasn't there, we would put our second finger on the tape, on the D string. But we have this natural sign, which has taken away the sharp. So we lower our second finger below the tape. So we have low second finger on D. We hold it for 3 beats. Play open A. 3 fingers on D. First finger on D. And we repeat that same pattern again 2 more times. So low 2. A. 3 fingers on D. First finger on D. And last time with the same pattern. Now here, we have something a little bit different that you're going to have to really pay attention to, because then we end that phrase on an F sharp. So make sure that you're not landing your second finger too low. We've just played a bunch of low second fingers, so you need to make sure that you're raising your second finger enough that it lands on the tape for that final F sharp. Now we have 2 more measures of rest, so there's more singing here. And now, this part is good news because it looks like you're learning a ton of music, but actually we've just hit a point where we have a big section of music that is all just the same as the first page. So we're actually repeating a big chunk of music. So here we have the arpeggio that we learned earlier. We're starting with 3 fingers on the D string. Now we're at rehearsal D, which is also the same. And now we come back to the same finger pattern that we just repeated at the top of the second page. So we have low second finger on D, so F natural, open A, 3 fingers on D, first finger on D, low second finger on D, open A, 3 fingers on D, first finger on D, low second finger on D, A. So you can see that it's a lot of the same pattern over and over again. Now we've gotten to the last 2 lines of music. Now here, the notes themselves are not challenging, so this gives you an opportunity to really think about the rhythm. Now you'll see here that we have dotted quarter notes. Okay, and this is something that we can talk about more in future lessons, but this creates a syncopated feel. So it shifts where we feel the beat in the music. So here we have dotted quarter notes. So we're going to hold each note for 3/8 notes worth. So I'll play it first so you can hear it, and then I'll break it down more. And we've made it to the end. Now, with this syncopated rhythm, I'm going to talk a little bit about subdividing. We've talked about this in lessons, probably. With most of you, you should have heard of subdividing if you made it to this point. But just as a refresher, subdividing is breaking notes down into smaller parts. So in this case, with our dotted quarter notes, we're going to break them into parts, and those parts will be eighth notes. So that's the pulse that we're going to be hearing in our heads for this part. So we're not just going to say, oh, that's a long note, I'm just going to hold it for a while. We're going to hear 3 eighth note clicks in our head for each note. So I'll show you what that sounds like. If I were to be singing the rhythm, my snapping is the eighth note subdivision. Bum, 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 bum. That wasn't a very good example, but we'll practice it more. Bum, bum. That was better. Now I'll play it with the subdivision. So this is a good way to practice it. Play the notes that are written down, but break them into 3 eighth notes each. So it will sound like this. Okay, and you can continue like that. And you can practice that as many times as you want. I would recommend doing that over and over and over again until you go back to playing the original version that's written on the page and you still hear that eighth note pulse that you were playing in your head. So if you played enough times, you'll start automatically hearing that eighth note pulse in your head, and that will overall strengthen your sense of time if you keep doing that. And you can apply that to any piece that you want. You can always subdivide the notes into their smaller parts to help you have a clearer sense of the rhythm. So I'll play the ending one more time. I'm going to play the notes that are written, but I'm going to play the eighth note subdivision. Go ahead and practice along with me. You can play the eighth note subdivision along with me, and then try playing the written notes while my eighth note subdivision is going on underneath. So here's the eighth note subdivision for the last 2 lines. Now we've made it to the last 2 measures, and they might look a little bit strange, but it's actually much simpler than it might look. You'll see that 2 notes are written right on top of each other. That does not mean you need to play both of them at the same time. Later on, you could, once you've been playing for more years, but for now, you can pick which one you play. So we'll pick some people in lessons that are going to play the top note, and some people that will play the lower note. But for now, you can play either one. So for the last 2 measures, you can see that for the top note, we have a low second finger on the A string, C natural. The lower note is first finger on the D string. You'll also see a slur, or what looks like a slur, connecting those last 2 measures. That's actually a tie, because the notes are staying the same. So it's like we're just tying them together and extending that note. So instead of playing 3 beats, and then changing bow directions, 1, 2, 3. We're tying those 2 measures together, so we're just going to hold that 1 note for 6 beats. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Or first finger on D string if you choose that note. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Now here, you might want to practice breaking your bow into 6 equal parts. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So you can practice that so that you get used to saving bow, because when we get to the end of this song, the guitarist will probably slow down a little bit. That's called a ritardando. He'll probably slow down a little bit. We don't know if he'll necessarily hold that note for 6 beats exactly. He might end a little bit early, he might hold the note a bit longer. So we need to be ready to really use our full bows and hold that note. And you're going to be watching me at that point, and I'll give you a little nod when we're finishing that last note. So just start practicing holding that note for 6 beats. That should train you to use your bow slowly while maintaining a good sound. And then you'll get a better sense of how long we'll actually hold that note once we're in rehearsal with the guitarist. So I'm a little bit sick today, so I'm a little bit loopy, but I hope that this tutorial was helpful, and we'll continue to dive into your questions and practice everything together at school. Good job!